Earthbending is a dumb mechanic. And I don't mean dumb as in bad, I mean dumb as in it's so ridiculously good that it overshadows every other new mechanic released this year. And on the surface, it doesn't do anything different than what we've seen before, turning lands into creatures. But if you dig a little deeper, it interacts with so many other cards and so many other mechanics on such a scale that it makes itself exponentially better. On top of that, it was iterated on in the set that it was released in with Toph the First Metalbender, making things so much better and making interactions so much more intense and unique that it turns the mechanic up to 11 right away. Let's take a look at why Earthbending is so broken. Starting with the baseline. The Earthbending returns the Earthbent land to the battlefield tapped. That's a new twist on the making lands creatures mechanics that mitigates the potential downside of, getting set back on your mana generation. So Earthbending a land that can sacrifice itself, like a fetch land or a wasteland, immediately breaks the intention of this mechanic. It's meant to not let your land creatures die to board wipes or combat, but immediately goes beyond that. Taking it a step further, Earthbending a land like Urza's Saga allows you to keep getting those effects over and over again, letting you tutor an artifact from your deck every 2 turns. Or it helps mitigate the downsides of a Lotus Field, potentially having the lands you sacrifice come back for 0 downside whatsoever. Same with Harrow-style effects like Roiling Regrowth or Entish Restoration. These cards are baseline good cards, but the additional cost of sacrificing a land sometimes sucks. But hey, what if there were no downside at all? That's what Earthbending can do. It takes the risk and cost out of these effects, meaning you don't have to have ways to play lands out of the graveyard or have extra land drops to get similar effects. Baba Lysaga loves this, for instance, as Earthbending an artifact land like Darksteel Citadel makes it an artifact land creature and fulfills her 3 types clause on a single card, which, when you sacrifice it, immediately comes back to play. This is what I mean by enabling interactions we don't really expect. But let's take this a step further. These lands returning to play enable landfall effects again too. Those Harrow-style effects now get you 3 landfall triggers with 1 single spell. Sacrificing an Earthbent fetch land is 2 landfall triggers, and your land play for turn for 3 landfall triggers a turn, meaning this mechanic is an instant staple in a very well-worn and beloved archetype. It's a mechanic that feeds and enables existing mechanics, a mechanic that retroactively makes other mechanics and cards even better. It also makes other older cards better by circumstance. Any card that lets you sacrifice a land on demand, like Sylvan Safekeeper or Zuranorb, are suddenly seeing spikes from these cards being introduced. The no-cost, on-demand style sacrifice of a land is incredibly valuable now that there is no downside to the effect. It's a mechanic that has removed the opportunity cost from dozens of existing cards. And that's what makes it dumb. Sure, it does what it intends to do, mitigate the hesitance to send a land creature into combat, but also does a Swiss Army knife of additional synergies that gives it legs outside of its intended usage. And that brings us to Toph the First Metalbender. Toph does something that we don't really see often in that, for a first time we're seeing a mechanic, we're also seeing ways to break that mechanic on the same card. What I mean is, normally you need some kind of additional enabler to do weird things, like Ashaya to turn your creatures into lands so you can earthbend those creatures. But Toph does that to artifacts while also earthbending. It expands the rules of a mechanic that we're seeing for the first time in the first set that it's printed in. Normally it takes multiple sets to see mechanics iterated on, like Flashback or Proliferate or Kicker, but here we just get handed even more ways to break the game on a single card. And this is where all of those things that I said about lands and earthbending now applies to artifacts, inarguably making the mechanic even stronger. Now we can apply those same ethos to artifact creatures. We can earthbend a Solemn Simulacrum or a Bright Glass Gearhulk, sacrificing it to anything and double up on its enters and dies effects. It goes for non-creature artifacts too, like Icor or Mycosynth Wellspring. Sure, it might not sound thrilling to draw just 2 extra cards or tutor 2 extra lands to hand, but that's value when there's also value in sacrificing the land/artifact. Remember how I mentioned Zuranorb and Sylvan Safekeeper? Well, now Arcbound Ravager or Oswald Fiddlebender are playing that role too, letting you pop these artifacts/lands that have been earthbent to mitigate their costs as well. And if putting those counters on an earthbent artifact/land can also be reused, like with the Ozolith or Resourceful Defense, well, even more, even better. There's no cost at all, there's no loss at all, and there's no risk at all. Then there's artifacts that sacrifice or exile themselves for big splashy effects. How about using the Stasis Coffin to give yourself protection from everything, always? Earthbend into it because Toph makes it a land and now makes it a creature, exile it to its own effect to give yourself protection, and because this is a fair and totally real mechanic caring about exiling earthbent stuff, the coffin comes back to be used again next turn, and the next turn, and the next turn. Enjoy getting protection from everything, and I hope your opponents can mill you out or remove your ways to loop this each turn. Then how about Mindslaver? This is the one that everyone immediately jumped to when Toph was revealed for good reasons. How about we never let a player take their own turn again? Pop the Slaver, it comes back, earthbend into it, and do it again each turn. Better, take a player's turn, neuter their board with their own effects and actions, then untap and do it for the next opponent in turn order. Just rotate each turn cycle until no one has the resources to ever stop you. Like I said, a dumb mechanic. But I'm not even into the most broken and concerning ways to use the ability. We're just scratching the surface. See, when you earthbend something, it's always earthbent until it returns to the battlefield as a new permanent. What I mean is, the ability isn't tied to the earthbent permanent being a land, or even a creature, anymore. Once it is earthbent, it is always earthbent. So let's say I earthbend a Soul Ring with Toph in play. If Toph is removed and the Soul Ring isn't a land anymore, it's still considered earthbent, it's still tagged with being targeted with the ability. And if that Soul Ring dies or is exiled, it comes back. Let's say I have a Shaya in play, and I earthbend onto a Ranger Captain of Eos because Ashaya makes it a land and a target for earthbending. And even if Ashaya dies and the Ranger Captain isn't a land anymore, it's still being earthbend, and I can sacrifice it to return it to the battlefield. And this goes for Toph herself too. Let's say I use a Liquimetal Coating or Liquimetal Torque in order to make Toph an artifact and, by her own ability, a land as well. Then I earthbend onto herself. Now, when the ability wears off at the end of turn and she's no longer an artifact or a land, she's still been earthbent. So if someone tries to remove her, she's just coming back. That's right, Toph just turned into the T-1000, a living liquid metal monster that can never be stopped. So yes, this is all busted. The floor or lowest usage of the ability is making an attacking land that doesn't cost you a resource when it dies. The ceiling, or highest usage of the ability, is near limitless based on the interactions that it enables. Even without earthbending, Toph makes for some wacky interactions. Just making all artifacts lands means they're immune to anything that cares about non-land permanents only. Hour of Revelation turns into a sculptable board wipe very easily, since it won't blow up lands or your artifacts that are now lands. Boom Pile also says non-land permanents and is also an artifact itself, and with Toph in play, it's a land too, which makes for the potential to blow up everything every turn, not including the Boom Pile. That's a strong way to hold your opponents hostage. Devastating Mastery, Fortunate Few, Urza's Ruinous Blast all specify non-land permanents on them for exile, destroy, or sacrifice. And if you can make twice as many permanents into lands than anyone else, keeping your toys around and even Toph around while everyone else loses everything is incredibly strong. I've been playing around with this brew, linked below, and it is dumb. Again, dumb in a I can't believe they've enabled these kind of interactions way. Each time I've played it, I've found new busted things to do. Like earthbending a Survey Mechan for 3 damage, 3 life, and 3 cards every turn. It's a small interaction comparatively, but it's one that's just really sturdy. And then there's doubling up on landfall triggers. Since Toph makes artifacts lands, and Ancient Green Warden doubles up on their enters effects, Solemn is getting you 2 lands. Ichor Wellspring is drawing you 2 cards. Again, just really solid and really weird interactions. How about sacrificing an Earthbent Gearhulk over and over to pull all of the 1 and 0 cost artifacts, creatures, and enchantments from your library? That's going to get you Esper Sentinel, Haywire Might, Sylvan Safekeeper, Sol Ring, Zurin Orb, the Ozolith, and even Urza's Saga. The Earthbending mechanic is just plain silly. It's turned existing archetypes and cards into sudden powerhouses. Conceptually and flavorfully, I love the mechanic. But as a raw mechanic, it's just ridiculous in ways that overshine everything else. But let me know in the comments, how have you been using Earthbending in old or new decks? Any funny or interesting interactions you've seen it enable? And tell me what you think about my Toph the First Metalbender brew. Did I miss any of your favorite cards? And don't leave without checking out my sponsors like Card Conduit. They are hands down the easiest way to sell your individual Magic cards without the hassle of traditional buy listing. They'll get you top dollar while handling all of the heavy lifting, from sorting to grading to optimizing your price across a huge network of vendors. And they'll give you cold hard cash for it. You can use the promo code MECHANIC right now for 10% off of all fees. And if you want to pick up the cards for this list, make sure to go check out Card Trader. Use my promo code MECHANIC right now for 5% off your order from any TCG. Card Trader's zero system means you can get cards from all over the world with only 1 shipping fee. Save money and time today. Lastly, you can check out all of my decks on MOXFIELD. MOXFIELD is the best deck building platform in the world and makes it easy to build decks and search for specific cards with their powerful tools. Have you checked out their drag and drop feature yet? It's revolutionary. Be sure to check out my brews and follow my profile there right now. If you were inspired to brew today, you have to hit that subscribe button. Check out this other deck on my channel right now for more sweet tech. And as always folks, good luck and have fun.